Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand each other. But objects with stories, now those are treasures remembered.
Hi, I'm Doug Jessop. In this episode of Treasures Remembered, we visit with movie memorabilia collector Brandon Fugal with a very special item from the movie Shawshank Redemption. We do show and tell with viewers' objects with stories, but first, art and antique expert Micah Christensen shows us a Norman Rockwell drawing found in a movie star's attic. With me today is Dr. Micah Christensen with Anthony's Fine Art.
We think of Cecil B. DeMille as the director of the Ten Commandments, which may be the greatest biblical epic that was ever done in Hollywood history. The film that he did just before that was Samson and Delilah, which was a tremendous hit in its own right. He prays that his strength will come back.
I pray thee, strengthen me, O God. Strengthen me only this once.
And with that strength, he pushes down the pillars, ending his enemies and himself. It's a high moment in drama.
The man has the strength of a devil.
No, the strength of a god.
When Norman Rockwell made a work, he didn't often save the preparatory drawings, and sometimes he gave them away as gifts. And in this case, he gave this full-size monumental drawing to the actor Victor Mature, who posed for the work. He sent it in a mail tube from his studio in Vermont to Victor Mature in Hollywood. And the reason we know this is because just a few years ago, it was found after the passing of Victor Mature in his attic, still in the mail tube, unopened. When we opened it, we knew that it was fragile. Norman Rockwell, when he was doing his large works, like many artists of his generation, did their final preparatory drawings, especially in monumental scale, on butcher paper. So when you look at this piece, it's about 2/3 one sheet of paper, and then from here over you see a little bit of a line that's another piece that has been cut, and there's a little that's been added on the bottom, which means that when we took it out of the tube, it was taped together on the back with that old cellulose tape that just crumbles after a decade or so. We took it to a conservator so that it wouldn't smudge because it's got charcoal, which is very prone to that. Had it placed on linen and then placed behind a protective light filtering acrylic that keeps it from fading. So it's very fragile, or it was, and now it's very stable.
Up next, we take a look at one of your treasures remembered.
Oh yeah,
That's on the
that
campus
is
of
them.
Howard.
That's at Howard. Yeah, that's on Howard's campus.
Oh, she's so powerful.
She carried on the family legacy.
We were blown away. I not only was a student in undergrad, but I've been a professor there for 20 years, so it's really a special moment to know that I had a family member who, over 100 years prior, had walked these grounds. It's deeply uplifting.
Yes, it is.
We're walking in their footsteps.
These were the genes that led to the test, that clarified the insight, that provided the answer, that determined the treatment, that improved the outlook, that changed a life and illuminated a path to better health. Myriad Genetics, health illuminated.
As a combat wounded veteran, I know how hard it is to come home and build a meaningful life. When I was in Iraq, our vehicle was hit. A rocket-propelled grenade exploded right under my seat. Traumatic brain injury, a fractured pelvis, severe burns. They didn't think I was going to make it. I had to learn to walk again and live with the scars, both visible and invisible.
DAV helps veterans like LaToya get the benefits they've earned. They help more than 1 million veterans every year in life-changing ways.
With DAV on my side, I was able to pursue my dreams. If my story can touch a heart, it can change a life. My victory is overcoming my wounds so I can help other veterans.
LaToya Lucas, may your victories inspire many more. Support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
Up next, we feature some of our viewers' treasures remembered.
The GS on this saddle stands for George Summers. Back in the 1930s, this gentleman would stop by the local saddle shop to give what he could for a special saddle he had made. Some weeks it was 25 or 50 cents. After 2 years of contributing for the saddle, he decided to tell his wife. Well, she was not thrilled and made him sell the saddle back. Fast forward 60 years, and a gentleman by the name of Stan Summers was hauling propane when Mr. Jensen came out and started to talk. He said, "What's your name?" He said, Stan Summers. He then asked if he knew George Summers. Well, come to find out that Stan's middle name is George, and that George Summers was his grandfather. They went into Jensen's tack shop and unveiled a saddle. More than a saddle, it was the saddle. There was a silver gaucho on the back that had GS underneath. Stan bought the saddle, gave it to his father a couple of years before he died. That saddle then went back to the barn that the grandfather built, because it just so happens to be the house that Stan Summers lives in, the saddle that George never sat in, at the home that his grandson lives in. And now Stan's grandkids enjoy as well. Everyone has a story. Objects with stories are treasures remembered.
Jess, thanks for coming on.
Happy to be here.
You have some very, very intriguing military history in your family. You served in the military.
I was with the 151st Air Wing for the Air Guard and also the 151st Civil Engineering Squadron. And what I did for civil engineering was EOD, which is explosive ordnance disposal.
So you got to do boom stuff.
Well, I figured if I was going to go into the military, I wanted to do something I couldn't do anywhere else.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I have to admit, that does sound, on the one hand, it sounds really fun. On the other hand, it sounds kind of scary.
Well, when I was in basic training, my TI, when he found out what I was doing, he just shook his head and walked away. He left me alone after that.
It's like, do not mess with this lady, she can blow your place up.
Yep.
So have you had any other family, kind of tradition in the military?
I have lots of family in the military. My dad was in the Navy in Vietnam, and my grandfathers were both in the military. My dad's dad, Frank Long, he was a major in the Army. My mom's dad, Eddie Janik, he was in Austria, World War II, all of that.
You've got a bell.
I do.
What's the story behind the bell?
The bell is my dad's. He served on the USS Albatross, and it was decommissioned while he was over in Japan, and they had to throw all the weaponry into the sea. It was really strange listening to him talk about that. He was able to bring the bell from his ship home, so I have his bell now that he's passed away.
Man, those are hard to come by. What does the military mean to you and your family?
To me, it means a lot. This country is a great country, and we need to do what we can to protect it. And serving in the military, you are a part of something much bigger than you. You know that you're there to protect others who cannot protect themselves.
Now, I know family means a big deal to you.
It does.
And this country was made from people coming from all over the world. And so you and I have talked about this before, and we have some common homeland, if you will. So my mother's 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 mother, okay, how's that, 5, okay, is a woman by the name of Anna Maria Leszczynski, okay, and she's from what's now the Czech Republic. And I understand that you've got some relatives from that same general area.
I do. I'm a little closer than you are. It was my great-grandmother who came over from the Czech Republic, Rosa Mašek. My grandmother, Helen Janik, was married to Eddie Janik, who went into the military as well and served in World War II. And that was the USO picture I was telling you about.
What kind of music did the Eddie Janik band perform?
Well, it's the Eddie Janik Orchestra.
Oh, excuse me, Eddie
Orchestra.
Janik Orchestra. Okay.
Because it's old school. Full-on Czech polka.
Oh, polka! Okay, so did you do some polka dancing as a little girl?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So if I remember right, there's the saxophone. You got to have a tuba.
Yes.
Okay, what other kind of instruments would have been in his orchestra?
Clarinet, drums, horns. It was like a big brass band.
What instrument did he play?
He played sax and clarinet. I have a clarinet that he purchased, and then my mother played, and the rest of the siblings played, and then my son played it in band.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's cool. So your son got to play his grandfather's clarinet.
His great-grandfather's clarinet.
Wow. Oh, that has got to be so cool.
It is really neat. And we found out it's a pretty awesome specimen because I had to have the pads changed and things. And the people who fixed it were just floored. I played flute and bassoon. Bassoon was my favorite, and did percussion. Music is a big part of my life.
Well, the name of this series is called Jessop's Journal. And my journal has all these marks and kind of scars on it, because to me, life kind of comes with scars. And, it's kind of cool because sometimes you get to help fix scars, I guess. But the last question I like to ask everyone, and it's kind of an esoteric question. So, Jazz Wilkey, how do you want to leave your mark?
I want to accomplish something where I'm helping people or animals, or just to be able to make something great, whether that's just in my own house or with others. I want it to mean something.
Let me take you back in time to around 1913. There's a busy little town called American Fork, Utah. One of the icons of the community is a store called Grant's Music Emporium. The proprietor was a gentleman by the name of William Grant. A newfangled contraption called an automobile, more specifically the Ford Model T, came through town traversing the dirt roads for the first time. No one had seen a car before in town, so Walter's youngest son, Melvin, apparently went to get a closer look. He slipped on the muddy road and got into what is registered as the first auto-pedestrian accident in American Fork, and who knows, maybe in all of Utah. Don't worry, though, little Mel was okay. Fast forward, and that little kid that got into an accident grew up to be a person that helps people avoid accidents as a member of the Utah Highway Patrol from 1935 until 1964. This badge right here was his. His grandson, Terry Grant, is now steward of this heirloom, which he received when he turned 8 years old.
If you have an object with a story that you would like featured on Treasures Remembered, go to treasuresremembered.com. Pretty easy. And you can get details on how to submit. Everyone has a story. Objects with stories are Treasures Remembered. We'll be right back.
Delighting you always.
Up next, we visit with movie memorabilia collector Brandon Fugal. With me, Brandon Fugal. So, Brandon, you and I have had lots of conversations, and you have some really, really cool artifacts. And as you know, objects with stories are treasures remembered. So what have you brought for us today?
I brought a very important item. It holds a very special place in movie history, cinematic history. The number one ranked movie by IMDb, by the Internet Movie Database, is The Shawshank Redemption. Many people are surprised to hear that, but it has been the number one ranked movie for over a decade. Wow. And the principal artifact or prop from that movie is in this pelican case.
Drum roll, please.
I acquired this very special item at auction this past year. This is the Holy Bible from The Shawshank Redemption.
The actual one, on camera.
The 1994 classic movie, which was inspired by Stephen King's short story, Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, brought to life on the silver screen, and a very dramatic tale.
I believe in two things: discipline and the Bible.
Andy Dufresne, who was wrongly imprisoned and ends up spending over 20 years imprisoned at Shawshank prison, made his escape by utilizing a rock hammer that he hid in a certain Bible. Most people consider the climactic moment where the warden goes to his safe to retrieve the documents that he had kept, all of those years, and then finds this Bible there deposited, and opens the Bible to find a message written. Dear Warden, you were right. Salvation lay within. Andy Dufresne. And then, somewhat symbolically, he turns the pages and opens the Bible to the book of Exodus.
Oh, wow.
Revealing the cutout for a rock hammer that had been sequestered away in this Bible for 20 years as Andy Dufresne slowly and methodically plotted his escape from the prison. It is an incredible story of redemption. It is a classic, and this, my friend, I believe is arguably the most important prop from the number one ranked movie of all time.
Wow. And not coincidental on the Exodus thing. Yeah, that's cool.
Very symbolic. But his journey throughout that movie and the ultimate payoff in the end when the warden finds in his safe this Holy Bible that it had been the method of escape for Andy Dufresne is quite a unique piece. They only made one. So according to the producer-director Frank Darabont, who brought this story to life, they only made one of these. They didn't have a backup because the process associated with painstakingly cutting out that rock hammer and fashioning this book was so lengthy, was so exhaustive, that they only had, really, from a practical perspective, one opportunity to make this. So this is one of a kind, and I believe that it holds a special place, not only in cinematic history, but also in our cultural history.
Beautiful. Now, I'm going to close with, it's dad joke alert, okay? Just remember, the truth shall set you free.
Indeed.
With another entry into Treasures Remembered with Brandon Fugal, I'm Doug Jessop. Up next on Treasures Remembered, we visit where the art and antique expert, Dr. Micah Christensen. I am Doug Jessop. Welcome to this episode of Treasures Remembered. With me, Dr. Micah Christensen with Anthony's Fine Art and Antiques. So, Micah, it's great to have you in the studio.
I am really happy to be back. It's good to be with you, Doc.
Now, you've got some really cool stuff. I always look forward to what you got.
Bierstadt was a German-American painter who is probably most famous for his paintings of Yellowstone and Yosemite.
Okay.
He made the American West come alive for an entire generation of Americans. And it's largely due to him and his ability to create these romantic, beautiful images of these dramatic landscapes that are in the American West that these parts of the West became national parks.
Now, you have two paintings here.
I do.
So tell me about this one over here on your shoulder.
This is an unusual Bierstadt. Before I tell you about this, well, I will tell you about it really quickly. This is a painting of the Tetons, the Grand Tetons, with a lot of yellow in it. And I don't know if you can really tell what's going on here. This would have been a quick plein air sketch. Plein air is a French term meaning an open air. And he was trained as a plein air artist. It's kind of an Olympic sport. Most artists would paint in their studios over weeks or months. Plein air artists would do very quick sketches in nature, and then maybe they would work them up later. Bierstadt did this piece in open air, and all of that yellow is from a forest fire.
Oh, wow.
So he's captured a fire in the Teton Valley.
And with the reflection on the water. Beautiful.
Yeah. Isn't that absolutely beautiful? So this was done on a cigar box container.
Wow.
Yeah, which is fairly common for artists. You'd go to an artist supply store, and they would have discarded tops for cigar boxes.
Yeah.
And there would be a cheap, easy thing for you to do quick sketches on. It was the equivalent of extra paper you had hanging around. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Bierstadt. Is that all right?
Yeah, please.
So Bierstadt was born in what is today near Dusseldorf.
Okay.
And you got to think of Germany at the time as being a conglomeration of a lot of different countries.
This is Prussia.
And his family moved to the United States when he was only a year old, and they went to Massachusetts, of all places. Which there weren't a lot of Germans in Massachusetts. They were mostly in Philadelphia. The reason why they went there are a lot of reasons, but one is that his family were famous in Europe for being stereo view photographers. So he came from a group of people that were used to going out hiking in the wild and photographing. And Massachusetts had a big market for that. So he, as a young man, is working with his brothers and his father in photography. And then he goes back to Dusseldorf and then Munich to study as an older man. Oh, young man. And you have to think that in the United States, this is the 1850s. There aren't a lot of native schools in the United States. The best school to go to for a German American would be in Munich. And the person who's leading that school, who's teaching, is Emanuel Leutze, who painted Washington crossing the Delaware.
That little one.
That little one. Maybe the most famous painter of the 19th century.
I remember you actually had one of that guy's paintings.
I did.
I don't know how you got that one.
I did have a Leutze. So Bierstadt studies with Leutze. And he graduates, I believe, in 1859, 1860. He decides to come back to the United States. And it's a terrible time. It's the Civil War. There's nothing to do back east where his family is when it comes to patronize. The patrons are all tied up in the war effort, right? So what does he do? He goes out west. And this, in 1881, is one of his many, many journeys that he made out west. This painting here on the other side, this is the Wasatch Mountains in Salt Lake. So we're right now trying to figure out which one of the peaks it actually is. But it appears that this is the mountains right behind Mount Olympus, which is the most prominent peak in the Salt Lake.
So if there's anybody out there watching, if this is your backyard, let Micah know. Just say.
Bierstadt was famous for this.
Yeah, okay.
You have to imagine that as an artist, what you're doing is not selling your work and efforts versus an artist when you're in. If you're a mountaineer worth your salt, which he was, you're mostly selling your services as a surveyor and geologist.
I always love having you come on because everyone has a story, and stories have power, and they help us understand each other. But objects with stories are treasures remembered. We'll be right back.
Simply type in a name and let Ancestry guide you through the world's largest online collection of family history records. Ancestry.co.uk. Discover your story.
Serving in Vietnam, a grenade took my ability to see. Today, I'm a sculptor. My fingers are my eyes. As a veteran, I know the challenges of life can be great.
DAV helps veterans like Michael get the benefits they've earned.
With DAV, more veterans can shape their lives into a thing of beauty. My victory is bringing beauty into the world.
Support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
I'm a history buff. I've always wondered how something got passed down from generation to generation. Why? It's not necessarily because it's really valuable, even though it might be, but it's the story behind the object. That's what Treasures Remembered is about. Hi, this is Doug Jessop, host of... Have you under what? Got a stingy knocked off. Hate it when that happens.